Hey, real estate agents. Want a place to showcase your listings? You can now feature your listings on homegain.com for 3 months for free. Your listings will be featured in an exclusive and ad-free environment on homegain.com. You will also get a free blogging platform from HomeGain that you can use to position yourself as the top agent in your market area. To start your free trial HomeGain membership, call 866-512-7913 to speak to a HomeGain representative. That's 866-512-7913. Are you or someone you know looking to buy or sell a home? When you use a HomeGain Realtor to buy or sell a home, you can get $150. Visit homegain.com and click on the Promo 150 banner at the top of the page to get started. Compare HomeGain Realtors and choose your favorite. Complete your home purchase or sale transaction with a HomeGain Realtor, and HomeGain will pay you $150. Get started today by going to homegain.com.
You're listening to Real Estate Radio Washington, D.C. Metro with local expert Ryan Sloper. Now, here's Ryan.
Welcome back, Washington, D.C. Metro, to Real Estate Radio. And I'm joined today by Louis Cammarosano with HomeGain, General Manager of HomeGain. Real Estate Radio is designed to build the Washington, D.C. Metro's market by giving you good free advice. If you ever have any questions, concerns, credit related or real estate related, the best number to reach out to us is 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. So we're going to jump into some tips to buying foreclosures and short sales. But before we do that, I just thought this was a very interesting article. There's a company out there called Adzuki that has basically it just launched out there, and they're trying to turn homes into massive billboards. Did you get a chance to check out that article, Louis?
Yeah, I did.
It's kind of hysterical when you think about it. What it is for you homeowners out there, they're basically saying that if you would allow them to paint your house and let them paint its logo and their social media icons onto the home, and it must remain there for at least 3 months, that they will pay your mortgage payments for up to 1 year. And I mean, the marketing behind of it is kind of creative, to be honest with you. But then I look later in the article, and their budget's only about $100,000, so that's not going to take them very far, considering they say it's going to be about $8,000 per house to paint. But this was definitely an interesting way to market.
Yeah, HomeGain did a similar thing. We worked with an ad company who would go to people and have the HomeGain wrap over their cars, and then basically they would pay the car driver their gas money, and then you'd have the HomeGain vehicle riding around for advertising purposes. It's not as big as a home, but
yeah, I know. Can you imagine, riding down the street and all of a sudden you see this house that's got like 50 different colors going all over the place? I mean, it is definitely going to catch your attention. I just thought it was worth noting, and it was pretty funny. I know a lot of you out there are considering, especially in this market across the country, whether you're going to, buy a foreclosure or buy a short sale. And a lot of frustration is setting in because, number one, with short sales, you tend to be waiting an extended period of time to get an answer from the bank and or investor. One of the, common complaints that I have is like, well, okay, we got the contract ratified by the seller, and now we're waiting for the bank to get back to us. And I always tell people that, it's such a process that's involved, and nobody can ever really give you a time frame for how long it's going to take. And the biggest problem that you're going to have is, when can you even start the loan paperwork? Can you start the mortgage paperwork to apply for the mortgage and lock in your rate? And I want to this is my typical answer for most people that are buying short sales right now and not really sure of, when to lock in their rate or when to start the mortgage paperwork. You should not do really anything until you get a mortgage, basically approval back, or a sale approval back from the bank that is going to allow that short sale to go through. Otherwise, you could end up, basically printing out the application, signing all the paperwork, locking your rate in, which most of the time you're going to lock your rate in for no more than 90 days. And as we know, most short sales take longer than 90 days. If your lock runs out, you're going to be on the hook for paying extension fees, which extension fees get very expensive very fast. So let's just say, you lock in your loan and you were only paying, maybe like 1% origination as a lender fee. And then all of a sudden, the short sale takes place and it's going to be at 180 days down the road, you could end up paying another point or 2 percentage points to keep that same rate. So
Ryan, shouldn't the lender tell you that?
What the actual the lender that they're working with?
Sure, because buying short sale, they should be aware that until you have sign off from the bank or the multiple lenders, that you really shouldn't be getting this loan.
Well, the funny thing is, yes, they should tell them that, but do they always? No. And most of the times, like I was saying, when you're just talking to a bank employee that's just taking an application over the phone,
right?
You know what I mean? And that's why it's so important that you're working with people that really know what they're doing on not just the realtor side, but on the mortgage side, because they need to work together to say, okay, this is a short sale. This is what they've given us as a time frame. This is when I think we can start proceeding with the mortgage application, because I've had 3 clients come to me after coming from a larger bank, I won't name names, that said, well, we went there, we applied for the loan, they went ahead and ordered the appraisal and did all that, and then we found out that the sale wasn't going through. I'm like, well, why would you even order the appraisal?
Right.
If you didn't have the approval? And they're like, well, I don't know. They just told me we had to do that. So they weren't asking all the questions, basically, is what it was. And, there really isn't any way to know that it is a short sale unless there's that short sale addendum within that contract. Does that make sense? So if the agent doesn't disclose that and the borrower just decides that they want to get financing from, a friend or whoever they have in mind, and they don't, tell them that, hey, this is going to be, could be 90, could be 120, could be 180 days down the road, then they'll bind themselves into that. I mean, the one client that I had basically had written contracts on 3 different properties, short sales, and paid for 3 different appraisals. I mean, those fees add up. That's $450 a pop.
Sure.
So
again, a quality realtor will kind of lead you through the process and advise you not to go and get your pre-approval until you've actually got agreement. Now, the issue that I find, though, with the short sales is, I think we saw the NAR statistics that 33% of homes sold in February were cash purchases. I would imagine that the cash purchases of short sales may be even higher. So maybe the buyers that aren't non-cash purchasers are trying to gain some, not advantage, but at least some levity with the or level of parity with the cash buyers and getting their financing lined up.
Yeah. 877-245-2030, 877-245-2030. We're discussing short sales and the tips for buying short sales and foreclosures. Well, it's interesting, Lewis, because it's been kind of in my experience is that the short sales, the banks are really they're aiming for a much higher price than when these things go to foreclosure. So a lot of the cash buyers, they'll submit lowball offers on the short sales, but they end up not going through. You know what I mean? So what ends up happening is that the seller ends up taking an offer from an actual live buyer that's going to move into that property. And, it's funny because what will happen 9 times out of 10, maybe not 9, but probably like 6 to 7 out of 10, is they'll get a buyer. It'll go in, the bank will do its due diligence, do its, BPOs, appraisals, whatever they do, and then they'll come back and let's say that, the realtor priced it for $300,000. They'll come back. Bank will say, "Oh no, we think $300,000. That's just too low. But we'll do $330." Well, what's going to happen? The buyer's going to walk.
Right.
So the buyer walks. Then that property most of the time goes back on the market as a approved short sale. Okay. And now I want to tell people that there is a big difference between an approved short sale where the bank is basically, they've already gotten all the paperwork they need. They've already done their BPOs, their appraisals and everything versus a real estate agent that just took a listing and hasn't started that process with the bank. A lot of the agents are putting that in the listing now that this is already an approved short sale at $330,000 and the bank's not willing to pay any closing costs. So if that's the case, you can feel really comfortable that transaction is probably going to go through in probably a 30 to 60-day period.
Right. And Ryan, you may want to also let the listeners know what may happen on the seller side when the bank comes back and realizes that this short seller has some assets and may ask for a note. Yeah. Well, there's numerous different ways, and I mean, a lot of the time what they're going to do as a seller, they are going to want to see your overall financial situation, and there really isn't any hiding any assets because they're going to find it, or they're not going to let that transaction go through. But at what point does the buyer know of the seller's status and whether the bank will let the deal go through.
Well, Louis, it's funny because that's the biggest problem because, as the selling agent, they can't really release information about the seller.
Correct.
So the buyer is kind of in this transaction blindly. And unless the seller agrees to release information for that selling agent to release the information, there is no way to know. And that's the biggest problem when you're on that buying side. You're always asking questions, but you're not getting the legitimate answers. I mean, it could be the whole time that basically the bank is asking the seller for an additional $7,000. And
then the seller says no, and the deal blows up, and you don't know why.
Right, exactly. When and the agent, they should be proactive about that whole situation and can see that coming down the line and go ahead and say, hey, this is going to be a problem, most likely not going to go through. But they don't do that. They hang in there the whole time. And I think that's the big reason why people get so discouraged is lack of information. You can't talk to the asset manager that's handling it. Now, on the seller side, the selling agent has access to all that, but they're typically not going to relay that information onto the buyer. And that just that discouragement just ultimately leads into them, wanting to search for another home, such as a foreclosure. Now,
right.
if they do choose to go the foreclosure route, it's actually a good opportunity. Now, in the Washington, D.C. metro area, there's not as many foreclosures as there are in the rest of the country. However, there are still some opportunities out there, and they are priced lower. These banks want to move these properties, and they want to move them relatively fast. I will tell you that a lot of the time the condition of these homes are not the greatest. Now, outside of Fannie Mae will go in most of the times and fix up the home to make it, turnkey, ready to move into. So those homes are great, but they're not as great of a value as what people think, like 10-20% under market. So I would say tread carefully on those and definitely get a home inspection to make sure that you're protecting your interests. If you do need to make repairs, rest assured, we've talked about this in numerous shows, that there is a renovation loan such as a 203K Streamline where you can, fix up the roof and any other, drywall or plumbing issues or anything else that you have inside your house, new appliances to make it more turnkey when you do go move in there. So you do have options there, and the best thing to do is to reach out to a professional that understands this loan. You can call me if you'd like. It's 877-245-2030, or you can reach out to a licensed realtor that specializes in your local area. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show, so stay right there.